Across its history, one very important teaching was given from all Jedi Masters to their brand new Padawans. Your lightsaber is your life. Because of this, new Jedi apprentices always tried to take the utmost care of their sacred weapon wherever they went. But what happened if a Jedi broke their lightsaber or lost it in the line of duty? What was the punishment for breaking your lightsaber? Well, it's probably a lot worse than you think. The Jedi Order utilized different punishments for the breaking of a lightsaber depending on one's rank. These rank-based punishments included penalties for Jedi Masters, Jedi Knights, Jedi Padawans, and even Jedi Initiates, but since they weren't given their own lightsabers, these punishments were more for acting dangerously in the training dojos. But either way, we'll start with Jedi Masters. Masters probably faced the least punishment out of any of the Jedi ranks for obvious reasons. They were pretty much at the top of the tree, and they were the ones often handing out the punishments, so it makes sense that they would be pretty safe. The only Jedi who could actually hand down penalties to Jedi Masters were of course the Jedi Grand Master, which was Yoda during the Clone Wars, or the Council as a whole. The worst penalty a Master could ever face for breaking his lightsaber was a hard slap on the wrist from the Council if it was done in a reckless way or in a way that could harm innocent lives. If the Jedi Master lost his lightsaber in battle, however, it was a much different story. It was sometimes even seen as honorable to lose or damage your lightsaber in combat, depending on the outcome of the fight. When a Master fought so hard that his lightsaber broke mid-combat, but they came out on top, they were considered a champion of the Jedi Order, and were even celebrated when returning to the temple. An alternate punishment for Masters would be forcing them to build a new saber, which when you think about it isn't much of a punishment at all, and that was for a good reason. Most Masters already had 2 or 3 lightsabers constructed and built as spares, for the unlikely case that theirs would break or be lost in the line of duty. During the Clone Wars, the number of Jedi who had spare lightsabers probably went up significantly due to the heavily increased risk of loss. Now next, we move on to the punishment for Jedi Knights with many years of experience. These are the Knights that are still one step below the rank of Master, but are pretty close to getting it, and will probably be granted it pretty soon. These experienced Jedi Knights are punished differently from the Knights who are freshly promoted, but they are treated slightly more harshly than Masters. At this rank, the Jedi Council would take the loss of a lightsaber slightly more seriously. They would, however, take all of the circumstances of the loss into account before making a decision, trying to be as fair as possible. If an experienced Jedi Knight lost their saber while traveling through the dark and dodgy streets of Coruscant's level 1313, then the Council would not be so forgiving, since they probably shouldn't be there anyway, and they should have been significantly more cautious, knowing how dangerous Coruscant's lower levels are. If an experienced Knight lost or broke his saber while fighting an angry pirate who was holding a man hostage, however, the Jedi Council would likely let this loss slide, given that it was being done for a noble cause. Now, the above rules pretty much totally went out of the window after the Clone Wars started, as the Jedi Order had a significant lack of Jedi generals to serve on the front lines and lead clone troopers into battle. After the Battle of Geonosis, where many Jedi were slaughtered and succumbed to the Separatists, the Council was deeply worried that they wouldn't even have enough men to lead the clones. And this was actually a major reason why Anakin was promoted to Jedi Knight when he was, because Yoda and many of the other Council members were worried about their rapidly decreasing numbers. Although this did cause huge controversy on the Council, Anakin did eventually become a Knight, as we know. Now, despite being pretty lenient on the punishments for accomplished Jedi Knights, if the situation was understandable or noble, those who lost or broke their lightsabers on the dimly lit streets of Corellia to a pickpocket in the Black Market District would be forced to travel back to Ilum, and this time alone. This probably wouldn't be an issue for most Jedi who were ascended to the rank of Knight, but going alone was definitely challenging and took a lot of willpower to get through. And in some cases, it was pretty likely that the Council would send the person to get his saber back at an even harsher Kyber crystal deposit than Ilum, which would take far more work and would be far more deadly. Now, moving on from that, we have the Jedi Knights who were either freshly promoted to the new rank or ones who lack much experience on the field. At this level, things get much more serious when a lightsaber is lost or broken. After reporting their loss of lightsaber to the Jedi Council, the inexperienced Jedi Knight would be stripped of any field duty that they currently had, and would be forced to accompany a Jedi Master out on their missions, just like they were a Padawan all over again. Obviously, this infuriated many young and non-battle hardened Jedi Knights, but it was considered a very crucial learning experience by the Council, and especially for those young guys who were a bit more rebellious, kinda like Anakin. On top of that, they would be put on watch by the Jedi Master that they were now traveling with, and the Master would have to assess the low-level Knight to see if they were still worthy to hold the rank of Knight. The Knight on probation probably wouldn't have a lightsaber with him during this watch period, but he would certainly be judged on his diplomacy, problem-solving, and negotiation skills when doing peacekeeping across the galaxy. In the unfortunate event that the Jedi Knight doesn't perform well during this period, well, to put it mildly, he's screwed. If he does poorly, The Master would then report back to the Council that he is no longer worthy of the rank of Knight, and have him immediately demoted back to Padawan, where he would have to refinish his previous lessons and the Jedi trials all over again. This is something you definitely do not want, as it likely hurts your chances of ever becoming a Master at all in the future. Most Jedi who got themselves into this situation considered it almost like another mini Jedi trial, which would test their ability and resolve to stay focused and earn their position back with pride. Like a lot of rules and traditions, this type of punishment was again heavily reduced during the Clone Wars for the exact same reasons as earlier, that Jedi generals were in such short supply. The Jedi threw their traditions out of the window to ensure that they had a fighting chance in the war, and that really shows you how Palpatine forced the Jedi to throw away hundreds of years of tradition, customs and history as part of his grand plan. Now after that, we have the punishments given to Jedi Padawans who broke their lightsabers. These ones were much more serious and could even cost a Jedi their entire position in the Order. After breaking their saber, the Padawan would immediately be banned from all field duty and excursions for a pretty decent period of time, unless they had a reasonable excuse for why they lost it, and it also depended on how strict their master was. While being banned from field duty, the Padawans would then be forced to go back and study in the Jedi Temple archive rooms for several weeks, focusing on things like history, tradition, and most importantly, how not to lose your damn lightsaber. I'm guessing they would also be the victim of quite a few jokes about lost lightsabers at the hands of Jocasta Nu or the other masters inside of the Jedi Temple library. So give me your best lightsaber jokes in the comments down below. After that, they could then be sent back to Ilum to collect another crystal to make up for their loss, but as you can probably guess, Padawans are much younger, meaning that this is a much more dangerous journey for them. It wouldn't surprise me if many hundreds of frozen Jedi bodies could be found on the planet after young Jedi tragically failed in their mission. Now after they got their saber back, they would be put on very careful watch for their next missions by their current Jedi Master, who will carefully determine whether or not they are still worthy to be a Padawan. If they are deemed to not be worthy, this is pretty much the end of their road for their chances of serving as a peacekeeper across the galaxy. Since they were too old to regress back to the rank of Jedi Initiate, there were two major punishments that they could face. They could either be sent to the Jedi Service Corps, including the agriculture group on Dantooine, where they focused on producing food and supplies for the Knights of the Order, or they could face a much worse fate. They could be expelled from the Jedi Order, which would then leave them unarmed and without protection on the streets of the galaxy. They might then even end up on the lower levels of Coruscant, like Ahsoka pretty much did after she left the Order, but possibly even much further down in the deepest and darkest levels of the underworld, where anything that moves is a threat. And as for the last rank of Jedi Initiate, these younglings obviously didn't have their own lightsabers to break at all. As a result, they were usually punished for doing dangerous things in training with lightsabers, just to teach them a lesson for when they get older. If they were particularly rowdy, they would probably get kicked out of lightsaber class temporarily, but most likely nothing more than that, considering they were so young. So that is what happened to Jedi who broke their lightsabers. Let me know down below if you agree with the Jedi's punishment for these actions. Are they too harsh or too soft? I'll let you decide that one. Thanks so much for watching, really hope you enjoyed the video. Cheers guys, hope to see you in the next one.